Hi there, and welcome to This Day in History for December 16th. December 16th is the 350th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, 351st in leap years, with 15 days remaining to the end of the year. We'll begin, as usual, with a word, and today that word is putative. Putative is an adjective that means generally believed, supposed, or assumed to be something or some way. Putative is nearly always used before a noun, as in, he challenged her putative allegiance to the cause, or the putative reason for their dismissal was poor job performance. The origin of the word putative is Middle English, Latin before that. First known use of the word putative is in the 1400s, putative. And with that, we'll start with the birthday of Catherine of Aragon, born December 16th, 1485. She was a Spanish princess betrothed to Prince Arthur of Wales in order to forge an alliance between Spain and England against France. These European conflicts have been going on for a long time. They married when they were 15, but Arthur died just a few months later. The powers that were decided to see if they couldn't marry her off to Arthur's younger brother, Henry VIII. Henry VIII turned out to be not the nicest person in the world, but she did become the first wife of Henry VIII. He had a wandering eye, though, and so in a few years he became infatuated with somebody else and wanted to have the marriage annulled. Lucky for her, she was willing to be banished rather than executed. So Catherine of Aragon did live to the age of 50. In 1486, the King of Portugal sent an expedition to sail around the southern tip of Africa in hopes of finding a trade route to India instead of the lengthy and difficult overland routes. That task initially fell to a man named Bartolomeu Diaz, who set out on this trip in 1487. He and his crew sailed south along the west coast of Africa. They made it around the Cape of Good Hope and the southern tip of Africa and were aiming back up the east coast of Africa. I'm sure it was not an easy trip, and sure enough, his crew got a hatful of it. They refused to carry on, and the officers were unanimous in insisting they go back and return to Portugal. They got back to Portugal in December of 1488 after having been on the ocean for almost a year and a half. And while he did not make it to India, they did gain some useful information for future trips. And so it is that some 9 years later, when Vasco da Gama attempted a similar voyage in an attempt to find a sea route to India, on December 16, 1497, da Gama and his crew passed the Great Fish River, where Bartolomeu Diaz and his crew had previously turned back to Portugal, and da Gama was the first European to reach India by sea. This is the birthday of Ludwig van Beethoven, born December 15, 1770. Beethoven is considered to be one of the most influential composers of all time. He lived to the age of 53. Now, you've heard of the Boston Tea Party, haven't you? That was on December 16, 1773. Members of the Sons of Liberty, disguised as Mohawk Indians, dumped hundreds of crates of tea into Boston Harbor in protest against the Tea Act. The Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union was a document that had been drawn up, an agreement between the original first 13 states of the United States of America, and that document was to serve as the first Constitution. And it was on this day, December 16, 1777, that Virginia was the first state to ratify those Articles of Confederation. On December 16, 1937, Theodore Cole and Ralph Rowe attempted an escape from Alcatraz prison. Now, a few people back here on the mainland have said that they thought they'd seen the men post-escape. but they are generally thought to have perished in the ocean. That's a pretty tough swim from out there. A song called Unbreak My Heart was written by Diane Warren and recorded by Tony Braxton. Released in October of 1996, it reached the #1 spot in the Billboard Hot 100 in December of 1996, which is where we find it on December 16th. It held that spot, that #1 spot, into January of 1997, #1 for a total of 11 weeks. Unbreak My Heart by Tony Braxton, our #1 song for December 16th, 1996. And I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video with a link in your email, messaging, or social media. If you enjoy this series, you can check out the playlist that contains these videos. I'll put a link to that in the description. That playlist lives on YouTube, so for other platforms, I'll include a link to my blog page. It's called No Really. You can also find me on Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey. All those links in that description. Alrighty, that's all I can think of right now. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.